Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. Even with the great run this team has been on, it was not a great day to be a Tampa Bay Rays fan, though. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 11:09 on this Tuesday night. This Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. Number to call the show, 877-566-1020 if you want to call in and talk Rays. Certainly an eventful day in Rays baseball, no doubt. And you can also drop us a line on Twitter at WHBC Official and we'll read your thoughts on the air. Well, we have the news coming down for Glasnows as it was revealed after his MRI last night, and they got the results back this morning. Glasnows has a partially torn UCL and also a flexor tendon strain. I've never, at least that I can recall, see both of those in tandem. The partially torn UCL is kind of where the Tommy John comes into play. If it was a fully torn UCL, then I think he was either going to have Tommy John surgery today or tomorrow, but because it's partially torn, they are going to try and give it time, kind of like they did with Andrew Kittredge in 2020, just allow him to maybe take some time off. He's not going to be doing baseball activities, throwing, anything like that, and see if maybe they can rehab it from there. A timeline for his return will be determined after further medical evaluation. I think probably the best case scenario is maybe he'll be back by playoff time. But of course, then all the question marks come into play. Is he going to be, ready to start then? Is he going to be stretched out? Are they going to have to use him out of the pen? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's a good chance it could be like it was in 2019 where, maybe he pitched a little bit in September and then, pitches in a couple of playoff games. And also, this is all dependent on how far the team is able to go. Obviously, in his absence, because this is a lot different than it was a couple of years ago when they had Morton and Snell. Glasnows, with all intents and purposes, is the de facto ace of this team. And last night we were holding back maybe some stuff just to see because we really couldn't say much of anything until we knew for sure what the injury was. But for it to be a partially torn UCL, there is a fairly decent chance. You'd say 40% chance that he is going to be needing Tommy John surgery, and if that's the case, whenever he gets it, I mean, that would put him out for the entirety of the 2022 season, but obviously we hope that that's not going to be the case. And another little nugget that we got about Glasnows was, he alluded to it a little bit, I think, last night, but he had, I guess, kind of slept on it, and they were asking him some questions about it today before the game. Basically, Glasnow put Major League Baseball's feet to the fire as far as their very sudden and quick ban on foreign substance use by pitchers. Glasnow came out clean and said that he was, or I guess really his whole career, has been using rosin combined with sunscreen, which that's a combination, as old as time. It seems like, whether it's rosin, and there's, a rosin bag on the back of the mound. It's a legal substance that pitchers can use. And then obviously sunscreen, which I'm sure, pitchers they have because, they're pitching out in the sun, whatever the case. Or maybe rosin and bullfrog bug spray, any of that kind of stuff. That's a very traditional mixture that pitchers have used for a very long time in order to allow themselves to get a better grip on the baseball. Really, the reason for MLB's crackdown on foreign substance use is not really for that kind of stuff, but for stuff like spider tack, which is some kind of, I believe, like construction material. But it's a very sticky substance, and one of those, along with kind of pine tar, that has led to a spike in RPMs for pitchers and the higher spin rate, which has allowed for better breaking balls and even fastballs with more movement than we've ever seen before. And obviously, baseball wanting to be an offensive sport, they're not liking that all this is going on, and with the advantage to the pitchers, all those things, and so they decide in the middle of a season that all of a sudden they're going to start enforcing, a rule that's been in place for a while that you're not allowed to use these substances, but it has just been, I guess, kind of a gentleman's agreement for a while that the hitters, they would rather the pitchers have better control of the baseball so that, the hitters aren't getting hit by pitches, to that extent. That's really where the rosin and sunscreen comes into play. That's not really for spin rate or velocity increase. That's just to get better grip of the baseball, so you're not just airmailing pitches and hitting guys. So you can actually throw the ball with intent and where it's going. That's a totally different story. As I'm trying to make that differentiate between those two things, whether it's pine tar or spider tack or whatever is going to come out. And about a week ago, MLB came out and said June 21st, everything is going to change. Starting pitchers are going to be checked for foreign substances multiple times throughout a start. All relievers will be checked when they come into the game or when they exit for foreign substance, and if any is detected, they will be immediately ejected from the game and be suspended 10 days without pay. And that is a little bit weird, but obviously the players' union was not going to allow any kind of suspension without pay for something that has not really taken effect until just now. And that I'd imagine that this is going to be another fork in the road with between the Players Association and the owners and all those things, in a pending strike and all those things. So, but that's further down the line. But for right now, so we've seen pitchers since MLB came out and word with that, and again, it's not being officially enforced until June 21st. But we've already seen a pitcher get thrown out of a game. I believe Joe West threw at a Cardinals pitcher a couple weeks ago. So that movement is starting, and Glasnow admitted that he went quote cold turkey in his last start against the Nationals, and he went 7 innings, 114 pitches. It was 11 strikeouts, and obviously not a good night to have a career high in pitches, because according to him, he had to completely change everything. He had to change the grip on his fastball and then on his breaking balls, curveballs, and sliders. He had said that previously with Rays pitching coach Kyle Snyder, Glasnow's grip, it was kind of like holding an egg, where you're if you can visualize that, you don't want to squeeze it too hard. It's kind of in the front of your hand, and the ball is coming out of the hand a little bit loose. And because with the combination of rosin and sunscreen, he's able to have that better feel for the baseball. And he was saying without that mixture, because again he's going cold turkey with the foreign substance use, the balls are very chalky, and I've known this before. I mean, I've just a personal anecdote, and it's funny that it was from that exact game. In fact, if you're at Tropicana Field, they have the authentic store, and you can go and buy mystery grab bag baseballs. They're just in a brown paper bag. You don't know what it is. And I bought one and I open it up, and it's got the hologram authentication number, so you can go look it up and see what the baseball was. It was a game-used baseball from that game, and it was a couple pitches to Austin Meadows in the fifth. But anyway, the reason I'm saying this is you hold the baseball in your hand, and it's you can understand where Glasnow is coming from. It does have kind of a chalky feel to it. They rub up that Delaware River mud or Mississippi mud, whatever it's called, but obviously that doesn't do enough of the trick. And I use that ball to play catch with my friends. It's a very casual thing. Imagine being Glasnow trying to throw 98-mile-an-hour fastballs, and you try and imagine the kind of grip that you would have to have on the baseball, and then those really tight breaking curveballs and sliders that he's snapping as well. And you can see how difficult that would be. And so he said going into that game he had to change his grips, had to really squeeze the baseball hard, and that put a lot of stress on the forearm, which pulls on the elbow, and that's where you get into a really dark area where you're going to have some problems. And he said he woke up the next day after that start feeling pain and soreness in places he didn't even know he had, like muscles he didn't even know he had were sore. So it was a whole new world for him, and I think he probably knew there was going to be a problem then. And then, of course, in last night's start in Chicago, he goes 4 innings and about 50 pitches, and he said he was feeling some tugging on the elbow and essentially took himself out of the game. And you could tell in that 4th inning, I mean, he looked good, struck out a couple batters, but was kind of overthrowing some sliders. And knowing now knowing then what we know now, it makes sense because his slider or his grip on the slider was completely different than it was before. He was squeezing the baseball, and so maybe the release point is a little bit later, and that's maybe why he was spiking all those pitches in the dirt. And he was, you could tell he was really frustrated. I would love to play the clip. It was about 6 minutes in total, this kind of rant that he went on, but some curse words from Glasnow that I guess should be censored if I'm going to put them on the air. And this would be a great opportunity to maybe put a piece together for some of this stuff for a monologue that I'll try and do within the next couple days when we get more stuff on it. But he was really, like I said, putting Major League Baseball's feet to the fire. And I understand exactly where he's coming from, that they decided to do this in the middle of a season. Glasnow is saying, he's like, if you want to get rid of foreign substance use, that's probably a good thing, that's fine, but give us a full off season to adjust to it, which makes sense. I mean, pitchers have to completely change everything that they're doing. Glasnow had thrown, a career high 80 innings already this year with, the rosin and sunscreen, and then all of a sudden he's got to go 5 days later, completely cold turkey with completely different grips that he probably hasn't ever practiced before in the middle of a season, and expect him to not only continue to pitch well, which he did, but also stay healthy, which unfortunately he was not able to do. And I think, again, knowing now all the facts, I think this really did have a great deal to play in his injury. Glasnow was saying that when MLB first came out with these kind of statements, he was hearing from sports doctors that obviously work with pitchers and stuff, that this was going to be a problem because, yes, there are pitchers like Trevor Bauer, like Garrett Cole. Yes, I'm going to name names that are using whether it's spider tack or pine tar or whatever to get an increase in velocity and spin rate. And in that sense, it really is cheating. But then I would say that's a minority of probably what's going on. I would say just about every pitcher, really on any team, is at the very least using that rosin and sunscreen. But that's not for the velo and spin rate. It's just to get a good grip on the baseball. So when you take that away, all these kind of problems are going to arise. And so I do tend to agree with Glasnow that MLB should have been more intentional. And I mean, of course, MLB is not going to have the foresight to predict anything in the future. If any, this is why the sport is in this position that they're in right now with all kinds of stuff, is because they can't see 10 minutes into the future, and everything is kind of catching up to them as they fall behind a lot of the other major sports. And this obviously is no different. They saw a problem was going on, and but maybe on MLB side. What are they supposed to do after all this spider tack stuff gets leaked? What, they're just supposed to sit by and let pitchers continue to cheat? I mean, the rule is in the rule book that you're not allowed to use this stuff, and umpires just have been, I guess, taught or decided not to enforce it, as again, it's been kind of a gentleman's agreement. Some hitters say they don't really care, and Tyler Glasnow, being a MLB Players Association rep for the Rays, he met with all the other teams, player reps when this was came down by MLB, because of course this kind of rule change was going to have to come in tandem with the Players Association. And he was saying there was 34 other associate reps, and he said none of them really wanted to change anything. That none of them really agreed that this should have come down. So it seems like from the players' point of view, this probably wasn't the right time to do it, and they probably should have waited, or they could have done it in the off season last year and allowed pitchers a chance to catch up and adjust and everything, and give them plenty of time. Instead, baseball decides to do this on the fly, and Glasnow ends up being the first victim. I thought, the injuries this season to the pitching was going to come from the 60 to 162 game season switch, and maybe that'll come later in the year. But I think this is the first of probably quite a few injuries to pitchers, because again, guys throwing 100 miles an hour or even high 90s, whatever, they're having to completely change their grip, and they don't have that same feel for the baseball that they used to. It's going to cause problems, and for the Rays, it ends up costing them in a really big way, because obviously they lose the ace of their staff, the guy that was pitching 6 or 7 innings every 5th day. So you give the bullpen essentially a night off, it felt like, and was keeping the offense in the game every time he took the mound and all those things. And obviously did not come at a great time, I suppose you would say, with the Rays having the best record in Major League Baseball, and who knows if they're going to be able to sustain this run without a pitcher like Glasnow. And we'll talk about maybe some repercussions of all this later in the show. And of course, we still have tonight's 3-0 loss to the White Sox to discuss. And I think we all could have seen this loss coming in the way that it did. I predicted going in that the Rays were going to lose this series straight up, not knowing anything about the Glasnow stuff. But you can tell that there was maybe some carryover, and that's a big blow kind of to momentum of a team to have news like this come out, and they played right into Dallas Keuchel's hands. And Keuchel has been a good pitcher this year. His win brought him up to 6-1. He's got an ERA under 4, and is just a really hard pitcher to square up. And the Rays only get 4 hits over 7 innings, and a couple of dribblers in there among those 4 hits. So it was just not a good recipe, and the Sox with a good bullpen as well, they were able to lock it up. And Shane McClanahan, who is very much still going through some growing pains, it all added up to a 3-0 loss. The Rays get shut out for the 3rd time this season, and the first in the post kind of May 19th era where they've been on such an incredible run. So a lot of not so good stuff, but I did promise you last night that we were going to kind of air all this Glasnow stuff out, and definitely be on the lookout within the next couple days for a potential kind of Glasnow monologue piece, because you want to talk about important narratives and storylines to a season. This is about as big as they come, with the ace of the staff going down potentially for the rest of the season, and crossing your fingers that it's not all of 2022 that's going to be lost as well. If it is Tommy John surgery that he's going to need, but right now it looks like, optimistic side, he'll be back for the playoffs, but they're going to have to pitch more than half his season without him, and that'll certainly affect the starting rotation in a big way. So with that being said, we're going to take a short little break. When we come back, we'll dive deep into tonight's 3-0 loss, maybe talk some contingency plans in the starting rotation with the Glasnow injury, and then also preview tomorrow afternoon's contest, a series finale, and a rubber match against the White Sox. We would love to hear from you. You can call us. Call the show at 877-566-1020 to talk Rays on the air. You can also drop us a line on Twitter at WHBC Official, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on there as well. So, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Rays Post Game on The William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 11:29, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Number to call the program, 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us at WHBC Official for any race thoughts that you may have. But tonight's 3-0 loss to the White Sox drops the Rays back to 18 games above 500. They are now 43-25, and they still maintain the best road record in the majors. It is now at 24-11. And the Chicago White Sox in the MLB standings now just a half game behind at 42-25. They are 26-12. The best home team in baseball wins against the best road team in baseball. For the victorious White Sox, it was 3 runs on 9 hits, no errors. And for the Rays, they get shut out for the 3rd time this year on 6 hits and 1 error defensively. Was probably not a good job by the official score to give an error in the 4th inning to Randy Arozarena. It was a throw home to the catcher Mejia, and they really should have had the runner out by a mile, and it would have ended the inning, and it would have kept the game scoreless, and who knows maybe how things go from there. It was a kind of a one-hopper from Arozarena, and it just caught the lip between basically the grass and the circular area in the dirt, with the batter's box and home plate and everything. So it just took a weird bounce, and it gets by Mejia all the way to the backstop. McClanahan didn't do a good job of backing up the plate either, but they end up giving an error to Arozarena out there, which I don't think is right, but maybe the thought was that it should have been a strike to home instead of kind of a one-hopper, but either way, that was the error defensively for the Rays. You want to look at the standings for Tampa Bay. Boston has won 2 in a row and 1 tonight, so they get a full game back in the standings. Boston just 2 games back, and of course these 2 teams will meet at Tropicana Field next week, so that's obviously going to be one of the more marquee matchups that the Rays have had this season. So Boston, again, just 2 games back of first. With the Rays, the Yankees are 8 back, and the Blue Jays, with tonight's loss to New York, are 8.5 back. So it looks like it's going to be just probably a 2-team race for first in the AL East, but obviously a lot of things can change. The decisions for the pitchers tonight, getting the win for Chicago, it was Dallas Keuchel. He's now 6-1 on the year, and he went 7 innings shutout, allowing 4 hits, 5 strikeouts, and only 1 walk issued. Kind of like Lance Lynn last night, but from the left side rather than the right side. A sinker cutter guy with a changeup / kind of slider action that he's got, and was really just low 90s, high 80s, but a really difficult pitcher to square up, and boy was he tonight. And then getting the save for Chicago was Liam Hendriks' 18th save of the season, which leads all relievers in the American League. Going into tonight, he was 17 at 20 for saves. So he's been incredibly efficient as well, and you could see why with him pitching tonight. I mean, fastball at high 90s and a nice breaking ball off of that, and a two-seamer as well with a lot of movement. He's just a really hard guy to hit, and that's why he's already got 18 saves, and he'll probably have maybe 25 by the All-Star break. Wow. And then getting the loss for Tampa Bay was Shane McClanahan. Not a terrible start for him, but like I said, still very much some growing pains going on. His loss drops him to 2-2 on the season. Over 5 innings, he gives up 3 runs, only 2 of them earned because of that error to Arozarena, which I think, at least for McClanahan, that's the right scoring move because they should have had the guy out at home. 4 strikeouts, 1 walk in the last 7 hits, which was really the issue. With McClanahan, very interesting. I don't think we've ever seen him throw that many sliders. He's been a fastball first pitcher, but his last time out against the Nationals had given up a couple of home runs on fastballs, and had talked about maybe taking a different approach on the mound tonight, and he definitely did that. The sliders were going early, and he had some nice sequencing going in the first couple of innings. But things fell apart a little bit with a 1-out walk to Vaughn, and then a single to Garcia made it first and second, and then with 2 outs, and that's the third out of an inning has been very difficult for Shane to get, and gives up an RBI single to the 9-man Danny Mendick. And Chicago on the south side, the White Sox, they lead all of baseball with hits out of their 9-hitter, so no easy outs in this lineup, and a White Sox team that's missing some of their better players, but are still looking pretty good, so that just shows how big of a threat they're probably going to be in the American League, potentially in the playoffs this year. The starting lineup for the Rays, defense first, in the outfield from left to right, it was Randy Arozarena in left, Kevin Kiermaier in center, Manuel Margot in right, and then in the infield from third to first, it was Joey Wendell at third base, Taylor Walls at shortstop, Mike Brasso getting called back up at second base, Yandy Diaz at first, Francisco Mejia did the catching, and the DH was Austin Meadows. So that was the one thing that we did not mention yet, was with Tyler Glasnows going on the 10-day IL, so they haven't made it the 60-day, but that very much could end up happening, I guess. Brasso gets called back. He didn't even go to Durham. He grew up in Indiana. He just went back to his parents' house yesterday after getting sent down because I guess he had already made the trip with the team. And so he was still there when they gave him the call back up, so he just made his way over to the south side and was in the lineup tonight. And Brasso didn't do terrible for himself, went 1 for 3, and had a single with men on base in the fourth. So that was good, and against a lefty as well. It was just a cutter that went middle into him, and those are the kind of pitches that he needs to be hitting. So if he can do that, he'll set himself up nicely. And I'm not sure that that's going to be a permanent move or rather a longer-term move. I think they just wanted to bring up a position player while they still figure out what they want to do. But if this ends up being a long-term move and they don't bring up a pitcher to replace Glasnows as they go back to 13 pitchers and 13 position players, then that would probably lead you to believe that Michael Wacha will be rejoining the starting rotation. They may also try and stretch out Colin McHugh, who has been kind of a swingman throughout his career, can start and come out of the pen, equal amount. But if they decide they want to go to the minor leagues, they've got plenty of guys there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But Brasso coming back up, and everything else was pretty much wash, I would say, against a left-hander. Yandy playing at first instead of Choi. That makes sense, and Choi did come in the ninth as a pinch hitter, and he's 4 for 4 as a pinch hitter this year with Choi's single in the ninth inning, which is pretty incredible, and he's got on base in almost every game that he's been a part of. And then Brandon Lau out against a lefty, and Mike Brasso coming back up allows them really to do that. We had spent all this time yesterday talking about how Brasso getting sent down was going to free up, everyday playing time for some more infielders and allow Lau to play every day, even against lefties, which I thought at the time was probably the right move to make. Well, that might not end up being the case, as they may go back to kind of that platoon over there at second. And then they go Arozarena and Margot in the corners, which makes sense. Austin Meadows, I didn't necessarily expect him to be in against a lefty, but with his home run yesterday, I guess you want to try and maybe ride the hot wave. And he did have another extra base hit, his 17th double that came in the first inning. So that ended up not being a terrible call. And they go Mejia over Zunino today, which I didn't quite expect, but that would just mean with tomorrow's day game after night game that we're going to have Zunino in the series finale catching Ryan Yarbrough, which might have been the thinking behind that. But I have long been saying I think Shane McClanahan works much better with Zunino at catcher, but Kevin Cash, who is a former Major League catcher himself, if he doesn't think so, then who am I to argue with that? That's for sure. And all of the other regulars playing as you would expect. The way that the hitting lineup was ordered, leading off was Manuel Margot, followed by Arozarena and Meadows. Yandy Diaz was the cleanup hitter, with Brasso and Mejia to follow, and a 7-8-9 of Joey Wendell, Taylor Walls, and Kevin Kiermaier. I think this is the Rays have long been kind of going with this approach. Arozarena back up from the cleanup spot, it looks like. I thought maybe he'd be reinserted into the leadoff spot, but instead he's been hitting 2 in the order the last couple of days, which I do kind of like, and that moves Yandy further down in the order, which may be the right move as well. So it looks like right now it's going to be Margot to lead off against lefties and Lau to lead off against righties, with probably Randy in the 2-hole on either day. Meadows moving up to the 3 spot. He's kind of been up and down, hitting 4 and 5. But lefty on lefty, you move him up to 3. That was a bit of a surprising move, but like I said, potentially trying to ride the hot wave. You have Yandy hit clean up against a lefty. That makes sense as well. Brasso in the middle. And then really the only other surprising call was they had Wendell down in the 7 spot, and he's the best average hitter that the Rays have, although his 0 for 4 drops him down to 285. So lefty on lefty was probably the reasoning behind that, and that makes sense, and that's long been the Rays' approach. If they're facing a lefty, have all your righties at the top and all your lefties kind of at the bottom, and more or less that was the case tonight, with the exception of Meadows in the 3 spot. The lineup as a whole, as I mentioned, they got 6 hits, 8 strikeouts, and they walk only twice, which that's never a formula for winning, certainly with this team. But I think, honestly, I was going to say the walks weren't really there, but that's not really the case. They worked several 3-ball counts early in the game, and a couple of just really awful strike 3 calls by home plate umpire James Hoy. I don't quite understand. There was a pitch, 2 baseballs inside to Arozarena in the 3rd. There was also a pitch, I think, inside to Yandy Diaz that was called strike 3, with Meadows at 2nd in the 1st. So there was just some bad calls. So the Rays worked decent at bats early, and so you think that maybe that's where the walks would have came. But later they just started again, just getting kind of worked over by Dallas Keuchel, and especially like in the 7th inning. I mean, they were swinging at the 1st and 2nd pitch and just making weak contact, which probably is not the best approach against Keuchel. So that's kind of where the stat line came from. They also go 0 for 7 as a team with runners in scoring position and leave 7 men on base. So again, that's never going to be a winning formula, and no wonder they get shut out for the 3rd time this season. There's not, again, on the day where you score exactly no runs, there's not a whole lot to be said about the offense. We'll briefly recap 1 through 9. Margot goes 0 for 3 with a walk, and his 3 outs were ground out, so putting the ball on the ground. A big issue that all Rays hitters had to deal with, they were having to expand the zone because of some really bad strike calls by James Hoy. And that's how Dallas Keuchel works. He was painting the corners well, testing the edges of the strike zone, and Hoy allowed him to expand further and further and further. So the Rays hitters had gotten into a place where they didn't feel like they could take certain pitches, and so they were having to make contact. Quite a bit of foul balls, and Keuchel, who is Wood, a ground ball pitcher, he ended up having 9 fly ball outs and only 6 ground ball outs, and with the 5 strikeouts mixed in. So that was a bit of a surprise, but as the Rays have been doing the last handful of days, they're hitting the ball where it's pitched. So if he's pitching them up in the zone, they're gonna hit balls in the air, and that's where the flyouts obviously came from. Was cutters and sinkers up in the zone, and they were going the other way quite a bit as well, which was good to see. About Margot, again, walked in the third with 2 outs and the bases empty, so good to at least give the team a chance there. And then it was that really bad called strike 3 to Rosarena that followed. So they tried to start a rally there, but was extinguished by probably some poor home plate umpiring, and then 3 ground ball outs the other time. So was putting the ball in play at least, and that's, of course, when Margot is at his best. Right now he's batting .241 on the season. Rosarena, he played left field as well. As I mentioned, the error that was charged to him was probably erroneous. If anything, I would give the error probably to Mejia by just kind of whiffing on the play. But like I said, it was on the lip between the grass and the dirt, and it just took a bad bounce, and I can't imagine that would be easy even for Zunino to corral. I think all Rays fans were probably thinking that Z would have made that play, but obviously you never know. There was not a whole lot of plays to be made in the corners, or really in the outfield at all, for that matter, as we try and mix in some defensive talk for these guys as well. That'll be more so with the infield. Rosarena 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Did look pretty bad at the plate, although he did get that leadoff single in the 6th. And for the first time in quite a while, he ended up actually pulling the baseball. And, of course, he had opposite field home runs in the last 2 days. It was just a cutter on 1 and 2, middle into him against Keuchel that he was able to dump into left field for a leadoff single. And as I check the scorecard now, that was the only time that the Rays got the leadoff man aboard. Or actually, they did it twice, 1 in the 6th and 1 in the 8th. So I guess good for Rosarena to do it there, and that was another issue that the Rays were having. They were not able to, most of their base runners came, with 1 or 2 outs, and it's obviously harder to bring guys in when that's the case. And then outside of that, probably the greatest example of getting worked over, probably by Keuchel, as was just chasing some sliders or kind of, change-ups out of the zone, and then been swinging through some kind of fastball on speed pitches, and then also had a strikeout against the reliever and another lefty, Aaron Bummer. So that he was doing it against lefties as well was not a good sign, but I think we have made some good progress on Randy with the opposite field stuff, and this was an issue that I think we had early on in the season as well. There are going to be nights like this where you face really terrific pitching, and again, the Rays are the best team in all of Major League Baseball. The White Sox are only a half game behind, so they're just as good as the Rays, and they've got some really good pitchers of their own. So even with as good as this offense has been, and they've averaged about 6 runs a game on the road, these nights are going to happen, and for a lot of guys, I think that's what you would chalk it up to. But also Dallas Keuchel just having a really good night, and things were obviously going his way. Austin Meadows was the DH, and the lefty on lefty in the 3 spot was a bit surprising. He goes 1 for 4. His average is right at .234. He hit a 2-out double going the other way. It was just, I think, kind of a changeup that was breaking down and away from him, and like he's been able to do when he's going well, hit it pretty hard the other way as well for his 17th double of the year. So 17 doubles and 15 home runs. I mean, it really should be seriously considered for an all-star bid in Colorado in a few weeks. But that was really his only production. And then, as you would expect, the rest of the game, which is putting the ball in the air, a fly out to center, a pop up to the pitcher, and then a pop out to short to start the 9th inning. So that is certainly Meadows putting the ball in the air. That's what he's has been doing the last couple of years. His swing plane is very much to get the ball in the air, and sometimes he's hitting it hard and sometimes he's not. But with the extra base hit mixed in there, you can't be too upset with his performance tonight, and was not playing the field, obviously. Yandy Diaz at first base, and he hit cleanup. There was a bit of an adventure with him over at first tonight, although he's looked pretty sound this whole season. Was the only hitter in the lineup with multiple hits, as he goes 2 for 4, no walks, and a strikeout. An average that's up to 258, so he's one of the best average hitters as well. And on base that's top 5 in the American League, right under 400, so on base about 40% of the time. Struck out looking with Meadows at second in the first, which was just a bad strike 3 call, and he was probably the only guy that was working consistently good at bats against Keuchel, although Margot had a couple of good ones of his own as well, and Brasso a couple as well. Hit a 1-out single in the fourth, and that was the only time, save for the ninth, that the Rays were able to get 2 runners on at the same time, in an inning when they had runners at the corners and 2 outs. And obviously they didn't score any runs there, but and I believe that was him going the other way. I'll check to make sure with 1 out in the fourth. That was against Dallas Keuchel, and he went the other way to shallow right on a 1-1 count. Just got a changeup away and went with the pitch. Also, his single with 1 out in the ninth, I want to say was the same. Actually, was that pitch on a full count where it just a slow chopper that died in the kind of tall grass in the infield. It was an infield single that he was able to run out. So, as Dave Will said on the radio, hit them where they ain't. And Yandy Diaz has done a terrific job of doing that. He grounded into a double play in the 6th inning with Randy at first. But that's Keuchel's specialty, and it seems like he can key that up whenever he needs it most. And that was probably the spot in the 6th where he got it. That allowed him to come out for a 7th, which probably changed the game as well. But again, putting the ball in play with men on base is what Yandy will do. And it's surprising to see no walks and a strikeout, but that it kind of has been trending in that direction the last maybe 5 or 6 games, at least from what I can see. In the 5 spot, it was Mike Brasso. He goes 1 for 3 in his first game back from being called up, although he only missed 1 game after getting sent down for the return of Choi. Flew out to right in the 2nd. It was just a fastball at the top of the zone that he put in the air. And then with a man at first and 1 out in the 4th, was able to put the ball in play for another single against Keuchel in the 4th. Just looking to see what kind of pitches he was getting there. And he singled to left, so he pulled it, and I did mention that earlier on 2-1, just a cutter that went middle into him. And turning on that pitch against a lefty is what Brasso is supposed to do, and I guess give him credit for doing it. And also grounded out to start the 7th. He was pinch hit for in the 9th, where G-Man Choi got a single and what was a really incredible at-bat, as he's really always done. On 2-2 against Liam Hendricks, was able to just pull the ball between first and second. He was getting all fastballs at 98 in that at-bat, and Choi got one down and away that he was able to do that too as well, which is impressive. And I did notice that watching down and away, and he was still able to pull it. But G-Man Choi is definitely no stranger to doing some rather terrific things. And that was the first pinch hitter that they utilized. Next in the lineup was Francisco Mejia, and another rough day at the plate, you would say, for him. 0 for 3. Got pinch hit for Lau in the 9th. I don't have much to say about Mejia. He put the ball in the air a couple times, a fly out to center and a fly out to right. One of them as well in the 4th came with a couple men on base, and that was unfortunate, but I would just kind of say that was Keuchel kind of pitching to his strength there, although he's a ground ball guy, but was just getting some weak kind of flyouts, and that was the case for Mejia there. And then grounded out to the pitcher in the 7th. It was pinch hit for by Brandon Lau in the 9th, and as you would expect, even lefty on righty though, he strikes out against Liam Hendricks. I mean, he is a 200 hitter right now. So to maybe expect him to come up in that spot, not necessarily realistic, but I understand why they did it. Even though Mejia was a switch hitter, he could have had the righty on lefty anyway. But with Brasso hitting, or rather Choi pinch hitting for the second baseman Brasso. I mean, they were going to have to put in Lau at second base anyway, so why not just let him hit there in the ninth? That would probably be the reasoning for that decision to be made, and they would have had no problem bringing in Zunino if they could have tied the game. In the 7th spot, Joey Wendell, and he goes 0 for 4 with a couple strikeouts. His average is continuing to fall down to 285. Fell, I think, about 3 or 4 points with an 0 for 4. So it is kind of amazing to see how easily that average can move even this deep into the season. Got the ball in the air a couple times, which I think for him was good to see. And his most important at-bat, we had a couple actually, including the final out of the game. He probably was the most consequential at-bats of the game. He flew out to left with runners at the corners and 2 outs in the 4th. And looking at that at-bat there, it was actually more of a liner. He started off 3-0 and then took a pitch, right down the heart of the plate. But on 3-0, you're not going to give him the green light to walk, loads the bases, albeit for walls. But then on 3-1, took swung at a pitch that he probably should have taken, especially with it being away, but did make decent contact off it, but just could not get it to fall for a base hit. So not too incredibly mad with him, putting the ball in play. Wendell, by the way, on the season, and he goes 0 for 2 tonight, but with runners at scoring position and 2 outs, he's batting .300, or at least was. And again, it's probably going down because he went 0 for 2 with that. And then in the 9th, kind of the same spot, runners at first and second. He was the tying run in the 9th, was Wendell. And on a 1-2 count, just chased a curveball in the dirt. But that's a tough at-bat against Hendricks, where he was just feeding him fastballs kind of away. And he had fouled a couple of them off. And then give him the curveball there when he's used to kind of swinging at fastballs. That's good sequencing by Liam Hendricks, certainly. So a tough night for Wendell, especially with a guy that's been so clutch in those situations. But even when you're hitting .300, in those situations, that means you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times. I know, as much as everyone hates to kind of hear that stuff. Taylor Walls, and by the way, Wendell was terrific at third base. Did have to make some running kind of plays, and he's been great at the hot corner this year. With McClanahan pitching mostly sliders, I would say. I mean, it had to be 65-70% sliders tonight. There was a lot of ground ball choppers, and the White Sox had plenty of infield singles as well. And so, Wendell and Walls were quite busy defensively, even Brasso. And then, an adventure at first for Yandy, kind of corralling those throws. In the 8th spot, Taylor Walls, he goes 0 for 2 with a walk. Flew out to start the 3rd, grounded out to start the 5th, and then did work a leadoff walk in the 8th. So he did lead off all 3 innings that he came to the plate. And as he's been doing quite a bit lately, working the walk, that's good to see. And again, as a switch hitter, that's probably what you would expect, that he would have a decent walk rate. And it, again, was fine defensively at shortstop, was not involved in a double play, though they had a 5-4-3 in the 6th. And then in the 9th spot, Kevin Kiermaier was 0 for 3 with a strikeout. And needless to say, he's been struggling a bit at the plate as of late, although it was not yesterday, but Sunday, or not even Sunday, but I think it was Saturday. Kiermaier was 3 for 4, but since then has struggled a little bit. And then a strikeout there as well. It was working some pretty bad at-bats against Keuchel, and for a guy like Kiermaier, lefty on lefty, that's probably to be expected. So played fine defensively. There was a couple plays, on infield singles that they were not able to make, but I think, if anything, that's just a testament to how good the defense has been this season, that maybe we expect them to make some of those plays that they were not able to. And now talking about the pitching, which did give up the 3 runs. That was all on McClanahan. He gets the loss. 5 innings, 3 runs on 7 hits, only 2 of them earned. 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, and gave up a home run as well. 389 pitches, so it looks like maybe they made the decision with Glasnows going down that they're just going to have to get him stretched out. They were maybe trying to just keep him limited to 5 innings, 70 pitches or so, as long as they could. But I think right now they're going to have to let him go because everyone gets moved up a spot. I think either Rich Hill or Yarbrough is probably your ace as of right now, and McClanahan would stay, at year 2 or year 3, whatever, depending on how you want to sequence that. 7 hits was bad. 3 of them were infield hits, including 2 to Tim Anderson, and again, just a lot of choppers on sliders. What was interested to see, and I would love to hear more maybe tomorrow if he does an interview, or maybe Kevin Cash talking about him, and I don't know if it has to do with the catcher as well, but a lot of sliders, more than you would expect from him. He's been a fastball first guy, but again, gave up a couple home runs on fastballs his last time out, so maybe he wanted to change it up. Was getting some good swing and miss action on it early, but as you would expect, a pretty good White Sox lineup, seeing him its second time through, was able to have some success against it, including singling off of it, and that's what happened in the third inning. They were singling off of that pitch quite a bit, and refused kind of to go away from it, which was a bit odd as well. It was all kind of slider changeup stuff. I don't know why, with the 98 playing as it does, that he wouldn't want to just challenge these guys more. But that was a problem that he had a couple times ago out against the Yankees, that he just didn't really want to challenge those power hitting righties. So whether it's growing pains, he's still trying to kind of find himself as a big league pitcher. Another thing that didn't work in his advantage was he faced 23 men. Their first pitch strike to 8 of the 23. So that's about 2 out of every 3 batters. He's starting off 1-0. And when you've only got really 2 pitches, but kind of 3 when he throws the changeup in there, against a really good lineup, they are going to get hits against it. And again, 7 over 5 innings. The race to 2 strikes, as he says, was not going so well, and the slider heavy approach, I think, was kind of his the main kind of takeaway from his start. He had a couple of moments where he had some good sequencing, like I believe it was to Yermin Mercedes, I believe, maybe the righty in the second. He went 100 miles an hour up and in, and then like the very next pitch went slider down and away. So if he had done maybe some more of that, good sequencing stuff, that he would have been a little bit more successful. But all in all, it was not a terrible start, save for just a play in the fourth. Although, a single with a man at second, most of the time that's going to score a run. They should have had the out at home, but that just was not the case. And you want to talk about McClanahan, maybe defensively, should have been backing that play up better, was not. He was just kind of standing behind the play, but was not truly backing it up as a useful defender. So that's a mistake that I'm sure he'll learn from, and the Rays coaches will point out to him. There was also, I believe, one of the infield singles to Tim Anderson, and I think it's just as part of maybe his windup and release that he takes a while to kind of get back up on his feet, if you will, after making the pitch, and it was kind of a comebacker, but it ended up going to Yandy Diaz at third, and he had to range over to make the play. So McClanahan on that play has to cover first, and he was just late getting over to first base, and so, and I think that actually happened a couple times. So that's another thing maybe that it can work on. And again, that's something you got to do just to help yourself. Ryan Yarbrough is an example of someone who's great at doing that. Fleming as well can kind of tiptoe around the bag and gets over there pretty quick. So that's what I mean when I say things like growing pains, and he's still trying to find himself. It just he did not spend a ton of time in the minors. Was a college player, a draft pick just a couple of years ago in 2018. So, but especially with the Glasnows injury, he's going to be kind of pushed into the limelight even more maybe than he already has. And so I would expect him maybe to get stretched out. His next start maybe could be making a bid at 6 innings, 100 pitches, who knows? Or maybe they kind of bring him a step back to try and keep him healthy. There could be something to that as well. And then out of the pen, a loss on the road means you only cover 8 innings. They went Springs, Kittredge, and Whistler for 1. each, and obviously scoreless. They've been terrific. I have a note here. The bullpen in the last 11 games has been pitching to an .079 earned run average, which has just been absolutely terrific. And then another note, I didn't do a great job of working this in. The Rays lead Major League Baseball with runs in the 8th inning or later with 98. I believe they have 15 more than the next best, which was Houston with somewhere like 81. So that was, of course, during their bid to make a comeback, and they did bring the tying run at the plate in the 9th. But again, what else is new with them striking out with runners in scoring position late in the game? That's been happening all too much lately. But for the relievers, Springs did fine, a hit, but a couple strikeouts, and he's I think been working himself nice back into things his last couple times out, and ERA down to 3.30. Andrew Kittredge was fine. He didn't seem like he was at his best, but 12 pitches, 9 for strikes, and did give up a hit as well. But got out of the inning scoreless, which is important. And then in the 9th, it was, or rather in the 8th, Matt Whistler, his second time on as a Ray, 12 pitches, 9 strikes for him as well. 2 for 3 with the first pitch strike. He threw almost all sliders his first time out against the O's, and this time was going a little bit more with the fastball and a pitch that kind of looked like a changeup, but they were coming up as sliders. In that appearance against the O's, it was all kind of frisbee sliders, breaking kind of down and away from righties, but there were some that broke into righties that just kind of broke down. They've got different movement, and maybe that's his pitch, and you can see why. He had pitched to an ERA under 2 last season with the Twins. Has really good stuff, and he's got his ERA under 5.5 now with the Rays, and I think they're going to be able to maybe bring some good stuff out of him. And again, this Glasnows injury affects everyone. Everyone's going to have to step up and in order to keep games close and everything. So another good addition to the bullpen is going to help, although some weird decisions are going to have to be made, whether Chaz Rowe, Nick Anderson, Oliver Drake, when those guys come back, who's going to go down? Because everyone is, especially out of the pen, is pitching really well, but we might find out that there's going to be a couple of other injuries coming down the pipe. Obviously, we hope not, but that's something you always have to account for. The staff as a whole, 132 pitches, 87 strikes. For McClanahan, if I didn't say already, 89 pitches, 57 strikes, but only 1 walk. That was the only walk issued by Rays pitching tonight. And that's something that they've been doing a good job with. So that was tonight's game. Just a bad approach against a really good starter, and that's going to happen, and that's a combination for a bad night. They get shut out. There are other 2 shutouts, by the way. One was in April against the Blue Jays, and then one was that game right before they went on that really good run. I think it was May 19th against the Yankees, where it was Garrett Cole for 8 and Chapman in the 9th. And then since then they've been terrific. This is their first time getting shut out, kind of since they've been on that run. So hopefully not a sign of things to come. But again, White Sox are terrific. I thought maybe they'd win this series, so it makes sense that we're going into tomorrow afternoon with a rubber match due. So that'll be very exciting to see. And McClanahan, there's obviously still room for improvement. What we're going to do now is take another quick break. When we return, we will discuss with the Glasnows, maybe not him specifically, but maybe who's going to replace him and how they're going to get those innings every 5th day. And then also what we have is to preview tomorrow afternoon's contest in the South Side. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Again, last call for some phone calls, 877-566-1020 is the number to call, and also tweets at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020. Or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at Speaker.com/user/WHBC.
WHBC. And at 12:07 on this early Wednesday morning, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Still to come, some discussion about some Rays pitching contingency plans and a preview of tomorrow's contest in a rubber match in Chicago. Again, number to call the show, 877-566-1020. So Glasnows on the 10-day IL with the partially torn UCL and the flexor tendon strain. They're going to medically evaluate him later, so we don't even have a legitimate timetable yet, but probably best case scenario is he could be back for October baseball. And we talked about how he very much feels the foreign substance ban is to blame for his injury, and I have to say, with knowing the facts, I don't disagree with him. I think he's got a lot of validity to the points that he's trying to make. But who's going to replace him? Mike Brasso gets recalled in his place today, but that's not permanent. We haven't really talked about this, but we should. It's worth explaining because with Brasso, it's going to be an interesting case about minor league options. I think I've discussed on the show, and it's been erroneous, so that minor league options was something that you can only send a guy down so many times. But instead, really, the rule is that if a guy spends an X amount of days on the minor league roster in a given season, that uses one option year. And I think guys either they've got 3 or 4 option years total. And once you use an option year for the season, I mean that's it. It's not like you can use 2. It's done. So that's why you're careful about sending guys down. Not just because you can recall them and send them down as much as you want if you can do it with the roster. But it's just how many days is he spending down there. So Brasso only spent 1 day with Durham, so he's going to have to spend a lot more time there to use an option year. And I'm sure he's still got a couple left, so that's not really a concern. So they can send him back down if they want without much consequence, depending on how long he stays down there. So I just wanted to clear that up. And that's something that I don't think many people know, because I know for a while I didn't quite understand that either. It's definitely a bit confusing. So it looks like right now they're not going to recall someone in his place. Luis Patino, who has pitched in the big leagues for the Rays this season, I think went 5-inning shutout a couple nights ago with Durham, and retired 15 of his last 16. So it looks like he's healthy and ready to go. He would be an obvious choice to bring back up. They've also got Brett Honeywell at the AAA level, who's appeared in big league games for the Rays this season. Shane Baz, who is the player to be named later in that Chris Archer trade in 18, where they got Glasnows, Meadows, and Shane Baz. We saw him in spring training this year. Has got really nasty, fastball kind of cutter. I guess it maybe would be a 2-seam, but he was throwing 100 with insane from one side of the plate to the other movement. So he just got called up to AAA after pitching, pitching about a quarter season with AA, and they already called him up to AAA Durham. So maybe not a guy that we would see right now, but maybe by August or maybe September, a guy that could be around, and who knows what the pitching is going to look like by then. And so those are all the guys. Michael Wacha, right now, with no one being called up, would probably be the biggest candidate to return to the rotation. He's looked good when he was starting outright and going deep into games. Had a couple, 5 or 6 inning shutout performances, and that's really all the Rays would be asking out of him if he was to return to the rotation. Since coming back off the injured list with the hamstring issue, it was the hammy, has really not gone deep in any game. It's limited to 2 or 3 innings and not more than about 50 pitches. So I would expect his next time up maybe that he would be pitching a little bit deeper into the game, as I think they weren't quite sure what they were going to do with him, but this definitely gives them an opportunity to bring him back out as a starter. And then another name that I didn't bring up yesterday, because I think we've all kind of forgotten about him, but was Chris Archer. Has only pitched twice this season, and the last time he did was April 10th, and he had left the game with the forearm issue connected to the thoracic outlet syndrome surgery that he had. He hadn't pitched in over a year, and so it was going to be a difficult endeavor, I think, to kind of bring him back, and he had left early He had kind of a setback when he kind of left doing baseball activities with the loss of his mom, which was a very big personal hit to him. And so they transfer him over to the 60-day IL after the setback, I believe. So, and it is going to be a while until we see Archer. That's the point. He threw 10 pitches off a mound last Sunday, and so that means he's still a far ways away. They're going to try and advance him to live BP, which is basically he'll just face hitters, but maybe not in a game, in late June or early July. So it's a post-All-Star break potential returnee, and by then, is how stretched out is he going to be? Is he going to be a 2 or 3 inning guy, and he's not even ready to really start games yet, and you're doing the same thing that you did in April? So at least right now, he's not going to be a Glasnow replacement. So my top 2 in likelihood, in order of most likely, I would say most likely is Walker returning to the starting rotation every 5th day, and those end up, at least for right now, being more of a bullpen day. And so that puts pressure on guys like Yarbrough, tap to start outright a little bit more, put Rich Hill, put more pressure on him, and guys like that. And so that would make the rotation right now, because they've got, as I said, Yarbrough, Hill, Fleming is probably going to be a full-on starter from this point. McClanahan as your 4, and then the 5, which is up in question, which will probably be Walker. So that's another thing I didn't think about as well. Josh Fleming, who has been kind of been behind an opener or in a bullpen day, maybe pitching 3 or 4 innings, and he's certainly capable. He just needs to be a 5 or 6 inning outright starter, and I think he's up to the task. So guys that probably could deserve some chances are going to get some now, which may not end up being such a bad thing. And then Patino, I would probably imagine, as the second most likely behind Walker. And I would imagine they're going to give him maybe one more start at Durham just to make sure he's completely ready. And if he dazzles in that performance, they'll probably bring him back up, because he did look pretty good with the Rays this year. So if he's healthy, there's no real reason not to bring him back up. I would say Patino is probably better than Walker, but you're playing with who you've got on the roster right now is what I would say. So we'll obviously wait and see on that. And again, it's no big deal to send Brasso back down, and I think that really does need to happen, unless Brasso is just going to have some kind of resurgence. But other than that, I mean, I would bring up another pitcher. Even if you are going to go with Walker, bring up maybe even a reliever or something just to take some innings. And then McHugh, another guy, has been going kind of 2 or 3 innings. We'd like to see it maybe stretch out to go 4 or 5 and maybe start, but I don't think that they're going to do that. But that's a wild card possibility. So now, previewing tomorrow's contest, it is a rubber match between these two teams to see who will take the series. At 2:10 Eastern, it will be the lefty Ryan Yarbrough going for the Rays and the righty Lucas Giolito going for the White Sox. I don't know if they officially announced Yarbrough as the starter. It is his day to pitch. I would imagine with everything that's gone on, just start Yarbrough outright. I think that would probably be the right call, as he's on a pretty nice run right now. Starting with him, the 29-year-old left-hander Yarbrough is 4-3 on the season with a .363 earned run average. His last time out, Friday night against the O's last week, went 6 innings shutout. No earned runs, but he did allow a home run, 2 total runs, but none of them earned. 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, no walks, 79 pitches. Was pretty good for him. Drawing kind of a blank on what happened with the error there. So I'm going to go back and look at the scorecard now. Gave up a double in the first, didn't score. 1, 2, 3 in the second, and then in the third, it was that E1 to Yarbrough where he just had trouble with a comebacker, and then gave up a 2-run homer to the righty Mancini, and then was really good the rest of the way. Scoreless innings in the 4th, 5th, and 6th to follow. So, and like I said, a good run that he's been on, and had 5 strikeouts, which was, or rather 6 strikeouts, which is quite a bit for him, I would say. Also, is getting a good amount of swing and miss, and his changeup, I recall, was also a really, really good pitch that night. So, we'd like to see that continue. Let's see if he pitched against Chicago in 2019. the team for Chicago is totally different, but looking to see just in case. He saw them once, and that was it. On July 20th, at home against the White Sox, he went 6 innings, scoreless, 2 hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts. So he's at least got success, you would say, against the uniform. So let's say maybe he goes 6 tomorrow. The bullpen is in pretty good shape, only because they didn't have to use the A pen tonight. So maybe he goes 6th, Thompson for the 7th, Castillo in the 8th, and Fairbanks in the 9th if it's a win. And also, JP, Feyereisen, Kittredge could go. I mean, they've got everyone. Maybe even have Whistler going a back-to-back to see what he's got. Then going for the Chi Sox, Lucas Giolito, really their ace. I'm not sure if they would consider him that anymore, but definitely going into the season. The 26-year-old right-hander is 5-5 on the year with a .381 earned run average. His last time out against the Detroit Tigers went 6 innings, 2 runs allowed on 5 hits, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. And he's gotten about 100-plus pitches every time out. Has gone deep into ball games as well. I mean, I'm seeing several 7-inning starts. He's got an 8-inning start against the Twins, but has not played a lot of great competition this year, like against the Royals and the Tigers and the O's. So maybe against some good competition might stifle him a little bit. Seeing if he pitched against the Rays in 2019, he did in July. Did he in April? No. So just one start. And it was on the same day that Yarbrough pitched, so, that's funny that they'll be meeting up again for the first time in a couple of years. On that day against the Rays at the Trop, 6 2/3, 1 run on 7 hits, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. So that seems to be a pretty typical line for him. And just checking to see the kind of guys that was in the lineup against him, anyone that we still have at this point. Choi was 1 for 5 that day. Meadows 2 for 3. Kiermaier 1 for 1 as a pinch hitter. Yandy was 0 for 5. Wendell 2 for 5. And Ozunino was 1 for 4. That's it. So that'll be interesting. And against the righty, I'd imagine they're going to go heavy lefties, probably Arozarena in left, Kiermaier in center, Phillips in right, and then they would go with Wendell at third, Walsey at shortstop, Lau at second, and then Choi at first, Zunino to catch, and Meadows to DH. Lau will probably lead off, Yandy, or maybe not, maybe Randy in the 2, Yandy at 3, Meadows at 4, and then kind of mix and match, maybe Wendell at 5, however. So that's how I'd expect it to go on. With a 2 o'clock start, an afternoon game, we're not going to be doing, post-game right after. Call it 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll be on the air to talk the series and then potentially any more fallout from the Glasnows stuff. It seems like that news is making the rounds. I mean, it was on the top page of ESPN.com today. So it is going to be a topic of conversation around really, sports talk. So that'll be interesting to see. Thanks to everyone for tuning into the program tonight. Definitely make sure to follow us on Twitter at WHBC Official. Follow the show page on Spreaker.com where you're listening to the show right now to make sure you get the program right when it goes live again tomorrow at 10. Hopefully talking a series victory. Hopefully a good start for Yarbs. They get to Giolito, all that good stuff. We'd love to see it. And as always, we'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC